Hi, my name is Jake, and I am a bookish drummer. So for today's video, I'm going to be doing a book review for a book that I just finished a few days ago. It was fantastic. It's by one of my all-time new favorite authors, and that would be Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Taylor Jenkins Reid is quickly becoming one of my all-time favorite authors, even though I've only read 3 of her books. This year, I also read The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I gave this book 5 stars. I thought it was excellent. I also read Daisy Jones and the Six, and I particularly liked this book, especially so it's in my top 10 books of all time. So to my surprise, when I saw that Malibu Rising was available for Book of the Month, I of course picked it. And spoiler warning, I loved this book. I gave it 5 stars, so now I've given all 3 of the books that I've read by Reid 5 stars, and like I said, she's quickly becoming one of my all-time favorite authors. So much so that I'm thinking about putting her in my top 10 authors of all time, even though I've only read 3 of her books. And basically the reasons why I love this book so much are the same reasons that I loved Daisy Jones and Evelyn Hugo as much. I love Reid's writing style, and I love her ability to write characters. She has a way of writing characters so where you instantly know who they are as people and what they're all about. And the characters in this book and the character work that she does in this book, much like her other 2 books that I've read, was phenomenal. This book takes place in 1983 in Malibu, and it follows 4 main characters. They're all siblings, and they're all related to Mick Riva, who is like a big-time singer. And the present-day story actually takes place within a 24-hour span. It starts at 7 a.m. one day and ends at 7 a.m. the next day. And in between the present timeline, you get flashbacks to how their parents met and how the siblings grew up and how kind of messed up their childhood was and how they came to be the adults they are now. And the story is told brilliantly, and I love how her writing style is just very immediate and very blunt, but at the same time, it can be beautiful. I also love her ability to play with different emotions on the reader because she's very good at switching back and forth between, having like a serious scene and then having a more playful, fun scene, and then instantly going back to a gut-wrenching scene that just tears your heart open. Usually authors are good with one or the other, but she's good with everything. I also very much appreciated that even though this book takes place in 1983 and there are a pretty good amount of like 80s references, it doesn't solely rely on the fact of 80s nostalgia to propel the book forward. There's a lot of books and TV shows and movies that heavily rely on 80s nostalgia to kind of create the story. She doesn't do that here at all. It's the fact that it takes place in 1983, it's relevant, but also it's not of vital importance. The main important aspects to the story are the characters. This book is written in 2 parts. Part 1 takes place between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., the morning and the afternoon before the big party happens. And in part 1, we get kind of like short bits of where the characters are in present day, but I'd say that the bulk of the story of part 1 is actually the flashbacks, and that was mostly my favorite part of part 1. The other parts were good in the present day, but the flashbacks were really what I was enjoying the most. And part 2 takes place between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m., and this is dealing with the party at the mansion. There's no real flashback chapters. It's pretty much just all present day, and I will say that the present day chapters in part 2 I liked a little bit more than in part 1. There's a lot more convergence of characters like coming together, and I feel that it was just really well done. And I love a book that has a very cathartic ending, and the ending to this book felt very cathartic, and I'm going to get into it a little bit, so if you're at all interested in this book, click away because I'm going to be talking about spoilers here. So Mick Riva is basically the worst. He's a terrible person in my mind. He's a deadbeat father. He walked out on his wife and his children several times, and he's just a despicable person. And in part 1, where we find out that June, the mother of the 4 siblings, has some alcohol issues and she ultimately drowns in her bathtub, I was thinking the story might go in one direction where Mick Riva, finally shows up or does something of value to the kids, but he does absolutely nothing. And in my mind, there's no redemption for that. That's just awful. So in part 2, when he finally shows up and kind of wants to start a new life with his family, in my mind, I'm like, hell no, you motherfucker, get out of here. It made me very angry. And when Nina finally just kind of stands up for herself and just lays it out on the line to her father, telling him exactly how she feels collectively for all of the siblings, it was so cathartic, and I was just like, yes, this is exactly what I wanted. Fuck you, Mick Riva. And the overall ending to the book, where all of the siblings, they were kind of having their moments of tension, right, in the story, but they all kind of converge at the end, and they're all content with each other, and Nina finally, actually does something for herself and leaves the country. I forgot which country she goes to. She decides to go to Portugal for an indeterminate amount of time, and good for her, because she's had a rough life dealing with deadbeat dad, alcoholic mother, and then having to raise all of her siblings by herself, and, doing stuff for money that she didn't necessarily want to do, like all of those photo shoots. She deserves, something for herself, and I'm glad she got it. So, in summation, overall, I love this book. Another fantastic Taylor Jenkins Reid book. 5 stars, very easily. I will say I still prefer Daisy Jones and the Six. This is an all-time favorite book for me. Top 10, easily. I will say, though, I might like it a little better than 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I'm not sure. I've read both of these pretty recently, so I'm probably going to have to reread them eventually and see which one holds up. But for now, I think I do prefer this one. It was, like I said, fantastic. And for any audiophiles out there, Taylor Jenkins Reid has great audiobooks, especially Daisy Jones and the Six. But also 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo has a great one too. Malibu Rising does too. I wish I knew who the narrator was because she did a brilliant job. And I'll put her name up somewhere. But yeah, if you love audiobooks and you love Taylor Jenkins Reid, it's a must. So yeah, that was my book review for Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Fantastic. Please let me know if you guys are planning on reading this book, or if you have read this book, let me know what you thought of it, whether you loved it or you hated it. Either way, let me know down in the comments below. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. Thank you so much for watching and have a terrific day.